How could an ordinary human being continue to function when the body has already issued a shutdown order? Legs are shaking, yet still moving forward. A heart beats far beyond safe limits, yet never slows down. A brain is overloaded, yet denied permission to rest. There is no sleep, no recovery, no sensation of fatigue, not because strength remains, but because the body's right to refuse has been disabled. Heart rate is forced to stay elevated. Pupils remain dilated for hours on end. Consciousness is stretched and locked into a state of artificial alertness. They work all day, they fight all night, and the most dangerous part is this: they believe this condition is normal. During World War II, this was not theory, it happened. German soldiers marched without pause, appearing in places the battlefield maps had not yet been updated to show. Allied forces were not frightened by tactics, they were frightened by the pace of human beings. Observers blamed discipline, they blamed fanaticism, they blamed the myth of a superior race, but all of it was wrong. There was no supernatural strength, no extraordinary willpower. There was only a chemical compound, a handful of rearranged molecules entering directly into the brain and shutting down the final biological safeguard of human survival: fatigue. From that moment on, the brain no longer operated for preservation of life, but for the forced maintenance of stimulation. The body continued to act, but control was gone. So what flipped that switch? Who was the first to interfere with the brain's control center? And when would the real cost arrive? When the body collapsed, or when the person remained standing but no longer governed themselves? Classified substance files begins here. To understand it, we must go backward, not to the battlefield, not to ideology, but to a laboratory. At the end of the 19th century in Japan, chemist Nagai Nagayoshi synthesized a new compound while studying extracts of the ephedra plant. On the laboratory bench, there were no weapons, no soldiers, no intent to destroy, only clean reactions, precisely recorded molecular structures, black ink on white paper. The compound was described in cold, technical language: potent, long-lasting, more stable than natural stimulants. There were no warnings, no mention of hallucinations, no reference to violence or loss of control. At the time, it was simply chemistry. Years later, another Japanese chemist, Akira Ogata, made the discovery that changed everything when he crystallized the compound into a stable, solid form. In chemistry, this moment is decisive. A crystallized substance can be stored, transported, divided into doses, manufactured at scale. From that point forward, methamphetamine was no longer a formula on paper. It became a usable product, and history accelerated. By the 1930s, Germany stood at the center of European chemical research. German scientists did not ask whether the compound was dangerous. They asked how long a human could remain operational. In medical literature of the era, methamphetamine was not labeled a narcotic. It was categorized as a performance-enhancing tool. It delayed fatigue, sharpened alertness, extended endurance. No one asked about limits. No one asked about consequences. Soon, the compound left the laboratory and entered civilian life under the name Pervitin, most famously as Pervitin chocolate. This was not rumor. It was documented, branded, advertised, and sold legally. The chocolate promised longer work hours, less sleepiness, greater productivity, with no warnings and no restrictions. But the chocolate was only the beginning. As war approached, methamphetamine ceased to be a consumer product and was absorbed directly into the military system of Nazi Germany. Medical records confirm systematic distribution. This was not experimentation, it was policy. Military drivers were issued methamphetamine to drive continuously day and night, not 8 hours, not 12, but transport runs lasting 20 to 30 hours straight without proper rest or shift rotation. They moved troops, ammunition, and fuel along roads not designed for such pace, while their bodies had already sent distress signals the brain no longer acknowledged. Pilots were issued methamphetamine to fly multiple sorties back to back, not to increase courage, but to suppress fatigue. Post-war testimony reveals something more dangerous than exhaustion: the disappearance of fear. Risk assessment vanished. Only the urge to continue flying remained.
Infantry units were issued methamphetamine to march and assault continuously, not for a few hours, but through operations lasting dozens of hours, with sleep reduced to fragments or eliminated entirely. Dosage was not rumor, it was written into administrative regulation. The objective was brutally simple: keep the human unit functioning as long as possible, regardless of physical protest. Then the war began. In May of 1940, German forces did not advance directly toward Paris. They bypassed it, moving through Belgium and Luxembourg, then driving straight into the Ardennes forest, a region French military doctrine considered unsuitable for rapid mechanized movement. What terrified Allied command was not the direction of attack, it was speed. From the Ardennes to the outskirts of Paris was roughly 250 to 300 kilometers of difficult terrain. Under standard military expectations of the time, a mechanized infantry force would require weeks to breach defenses, secure logistics, and advance. Instead, German forces shattered the French line at Sedan and poured through the gap. Within days, defensive structures collapsed. Reconnaissance reports were rejected not because they were inaccurate, but because the tempo they described exceeded known human physiological limits. Maps lagged behind reality. By the time lines were drawn, German units were already behind them. In just over a month, Paris fell, so fast that many defensive units never fully engaged. In early encounters, Allied soldiers did not describe facing braver men. They described facing something that did not operate normally. Rigid stares, unnatural reflex speed, no retreat after engagement, no pause. They kept advancing, not because of ideological devotion, not because of mythical racial mythology, but because fatigue was chemically locked out of the brain. Allied accounts do not call them fanatics. They describe men who no longer recognized when to stop. Captured medical files documented recurring symptoms: no external injuries, yet dilated pupils, prolonged tachycardia, emotional instability. Some cried without cause, others erupted into sudden violence. Many remembered nothing afterward. A British report recorded a soldier captured after more than 50 hours of continuous marching, who, when questioned, repeated only one sentence: "I'm not tired." Hours later, his mental state collapsed completely before physical exhaustion could end him. After the war, the true cost emerged. Medical records in Germany and Poland documented persistent psychosis, impulse control disorders, and unprovoked violence. Many former soldiers no longer experienced normal fatigue or fear, but they also lost the ability to regulate themselves. The brain had adapted to continuous stimulation and could not return to baseline. These men did not fight for ideals. They did not advance because of mythical strength. They advanced because of chemistry. And when the chemistry withdrew, what remained was not victory, but broken human beings. The conclusion is clear. Stimulation today becomes collapse tomorrow. There is no free strength, no safe shortcut for the human brain. Avoid substances that promise instant transcendence. The price always arrives later, and it is rarely reversible. Classified Substance Files tells these stories so you do not become one of them. Follow the channel to understand, to avoid, and to keep control of yourself.